Welcome everyone to our webinar about the results of survey about HR risks and challenges in the light of COVID-19. We are at the strategic HR communication agencies, for those who haven't worked with us, represented here by two partners, Mizan Chulstan and Parsla Bashko.
Hi everyone.
Yes, we will have roughly three big parts to our presentation. The first being survey results, and we will have a couple of polls in between just to see what your companies or represented institutions are doing, and we will give you a cool kind of quick glimpse into what happens globally, and we will have a Q&A part. So feel free to ask questions as we go in the chat or Q&A. We will spend and have time to discuss them at the end. All in all, I expect we'll have a cover survey and poll in max 40 minutes, so do probably global perspective, and then depending from how many questions we'll have, we will definitely be done by 3 o'clock. So let's start, and before we go question by question through actual results, I think it's important to say why we organize this survey, and the reason is fairly straightforward. Right from the announcement of emergency state in mid-March, and actually for international companies already 2 weeks before, we saw many of our clients as well initiating different kind of measures. And what was interesting was that all of them were doing something, but all of them were not sure whether they're doing the right thing. And I think that refers to all of us in all possible levels. So we did get a lot of questions about, am I doing enough? Have I done too much? What are others doing? What are some of the benchmarks? So basically, our aim was to do this Pan-Baltic quick survey as a pulse survey to help companies have some benchmarks as for what is happening, and also really to have that glimpse of the situation overall. So this is how we started, and we have been very grateful to a total of 106 Baltic companies who took part. The fieldwork was carried out in the first 2 weeks of April, and this is very important. In March, as you know, the situation was changing hour by hour, then day by day, now somewhat week by week, but essentially we do understand that this is a quick snapshot on first immediate reactions. This is by far not the snapshot of final list of measures taken. So the situation has already in between evolved and will continue to evolve. We accept several rounds of different kind of measures, both depending from government policies and measures, but also looking at how companies are adapting to changing situations in their respective businesses. So we do hope to carry out the survey at least one more time in mid-May. Ideally, it should be every month until the situation stabilizes. When it comes to the structure of survey itself, we had two parts. The first part, which asked straightforward, what are you currently doing in respect to your workforce? So here's the list of 20 activities that are very widespread internationally as well. Please mark which of them you have chosen, and then please provide details as for what exactly under each of these activities. We also had an open end question to suggest any other activities that we haven't included, and we tried to also quantify those. The second part of the survey is based on Boston Consulting Group study, kind of a basic framework of 12 action points that was based on an analysis of the last crisis, financial crisis 2007 and 8, and it basically highlights 12 capabilities that are important, and ask companies to mark which of them they think is important, and or how important is each of them, and how capable in each of those respective fields their company is. So what we were looking for are gaps, really gaps between what is needed and what companies are able to do that. So two big blocks. So before we get into results, just quick demographic profile. Very happy to see that we had not only HR managers taking part, but also CEOs and CFOs. It's not only Latvia, also Estonia, Lithuania, and pan-Baltic countries, though in kind of smaller numbers. So we are not analyzing individual differences between countries, and it was our intention straight away to have larger sample, assuming, and I think rightly so, that we are very similar, even though of course situation does differ in some respects, even if you look at the COVID controlling both measures and results. So we have very diverse group of companies in respect to company size, employee-wise, and turnover. But when it comes to industries, the sample is slightly skewed toward, well, not slightly, I would say it's skewed towards services. The survey itself was in English. We do admit it. This is some part you have to take into consideration. This survey does not cover, all moms and pop stores, which are equally important, but much harder to reach, at least in respect to studies of this kind of speed and so. So let's start and go through main insights when it comes to implemented activities by companies. And here they are, full list of those activities. One can see already meaning it is a fairly long list, which is hard to understand immediately or make sense or conclusions just by looking at them right now. So what we'll do now, we'll go inside by inside, because we've actually grouped them and looked, as I told, into specifics in each of them. So if we're talking about freezing hiring, we did ask to what extent. Are we talking about 100% hiring freeze or 20% hiring freeze? So there is a big variations in what is understood by each of activities. So we'll go step by step in each of the activities. So let's start, Parsla.
Thank you. So what you probably noticed when you saw the full list was that on the upper two, actually, there are also some other activities. Employers and companies were very much interested in or taking all the necessary steps to make sure that their employees are safe. Should it be transforming to the remote work? There we got approximately 70% of respondents stating that, and new hygiene and health habits clearly were indicated by 69% of the respondents. Why this we think is important is because that was something what companies actually did quicker than cutting costs. And it shows that we as a society have progressed. One of the questions we got in one of the auditories was, so are you then saying that another 30% were not doing that? What we are saying, also based on inquiries from our clients, is that pretty much 30% was the amount of white collar employees either working remotely already before, or their companies, their employers had taken care of that a bit earlier than before the crisis started. If we think and if we look deeper into the transformation to remote work, there are clearly three big topics on minds of the companies. First one, or the one which was rated the highest, 45% of respondents marked that specific choice, was introducing new communication channels. And I think that is undoubtedly the most important thing every day, but specifically now in the crisis, is ability to communicate. We didn't find too many of very unique answers, meaning companies were working on introducing video conferencing tools, daily communication, digital solutions, and thinking how to make sure that their management communication reaches at least a majority of the employees. When it comes to the software and tools, I think it was a big topic itself. I actually this morning flipped through some 3-week-old materials where everyone was talking about, hey, what kind of tools, what kind of softwares we should have. Only 3 weeks have passed, and pretty much we all have done that already. But what we saw as the most popular activities back then, pretty much the survey closed 10 days ago, was really thinking about how to make sure that employees have equipment available at home, should it be the larger screens or even the computers, or how do we make sure that people from working at home can have access to all the necessary information they actually need. What we also actually found out, and that wasn't a specific question in a survey about the appropriate tools, was the physical environment, meaning sending over to the homes chairs or desks, or even lighting, really to make sure that employees can feel ergonomic in their own home, so that they feel pretty much like working in the office. And also 28% of organizations, not so many though, only 1/3, even less, were training people on digital readiness. And what we clearly also saw was that majority of that training was dedicated to making sure that people know how to use all the new technology, but also kind of providing different tips and tricks on how to kind of survive in very hectic first weeks of working from home. Zana, anything you want to add?
Yes, no, I think what is important is to in the midst of course, a number of webinars and kind of articles on best tools or ways to sound persuasive over video and so on and so forth, is to understand that, you know, just by transitioning from to Zoom, we haven't done anything in respect to, you know, major digital transformation, you know, introducing fundamentally new ways of working, reviewing our processes, automating half of them, and doing something, you know, fundamentally different. So I think it's too early. Obviously, it's been now six weeks, but I think it's critically important not to celebrate the tiny achievements of starting to use basic tools and really focus on digital readiness in a broader, also state level. But that's my opinion.
Yes, because what we also clearly saw was that still majority of activities were taken to protect the physical workspace, and that is exactly, Zana, where you were on the next slide, where what we were seeing was that still the hygiene, measuring temperature, were the main kind of areas of concern in those first weeks of the health crisis back then. And you also see some of the most popular activities really thinking about the physical aspects of washing hands or keeping the distance, or even sometimes measuring the temperature hour by hour, really, to make sure that premises are safe. But also there, I think what we saw, Zan, and you have to help me out with this as well, was that those first weeks were more dedicated to physical safety, like in a Maslow's pyramid, meaning taking care really of the bottom part of the needs. And only now we see more and more companies and employees as well talking about also emotional well-being or mental well-being.
Well, which is natural. I don't think in the case of COVID, you know, Maslow pyramid is not a problem. Basically, this is the very core of staying alive. So that is all natural and according to law. But you're right that only over the last couple of weeks, and we see it also internationally, study after study about mental effects of isolation and radical uncertainty. And again, not many companies, at least in the Baltic states, have started actively doing something. But for example, one of the largest IT companies in Latvia, Draugiem, if I'm not mistaken, 2 weeks ago announced that they are adding 5 counseling sessions to their insurance, and that they understand it's not a lot and it's not sufficient, but at least it's a step in the right direction. But I suggest this topic is being approached seriously, and not because we are HR people who like soft things. If nothing else, then we saw already in first weeks some of the IT companies, as I say, who can measure productivity very well. They saw a drop in 30%. So this has little to do with physical well-being. This has a lot to do with, you know, both the way work is organized, but also with the overall stress, which is, you know, comes from family, from being part-time teachers, and you know, not knowing what will happen altogether.
So what we would like you to do now is to answer to the question. We are now about to launch a poll where we would like to hear what you specifically were communicated to your employees because of the remote work being introduced to your workplace. Let's see if this works, Donna. Oh.
Well, I see it. I'll fill it out myself.
Do you think you can do it? You're a panelist. I don't think you can.
I have a submit button.
Okay. You see, this is a good sign.
We have
Woohoo!
people in chat. Okay, it works. Good.
Yay! We should have some kind of the lobby music playing now.
I know something.
Or telling some jokes. Great. Everyone says it works, so it works.
Okay, submit. How many have submitted already, Bartel?
I see 15.
Okay, we'll wait a bit more.
This is so cool.
This is quite cool.
Yeah. I think let's wait until kind of 2.5 minutes, and then we will go on. What we will do at the end of the webinar, we will collect all your answers and also distribute them to you so that you can see what others were doing in the meantime. Yeah, 30 seconds, and then I think we can move on.
So how many? Okay.
We have 20, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go on then.
Let's proceed to the next insight. And apart from the kind of diagram with most popular or activities kind of in ascending or the descending order, apart from first 2 that were in the category of health and remote work, actually, if you look at most of all others, it's one or other type of cost cutting. So combining it all, we can say that 80% of companies in first weeks already of COVID were actually starting to cut their costs. And for most part, we see that it's always a combination already. It's never just one. So basically, we saw the average of 3, but there are plenty who have gone for pretty much every single item that can be cut. If we look more into most popular cost-cutting measures, when it comes to the number of cuts, we see that the most popular or widely used are the ones who are easiest to do. So straightforward, let's cut all team building projects, all engagement activities. Let's completely freeze hiring. Let's cut back training. Of course, employer brand without discussion. Bonus payments as well. Well out. If you ask them follow-up questions, to what extent, most of those who mark that they're doing this said that they're doing it 100%. So as I told, if you're saying freezing hiring, it's a full freeze, basically total standstill. And this is one of those aspects that we are quite worried, because we see that companies are really not approaching it strategically and don't assess neither medium nor long-term effects. So just because something is easier to cut right now doesn't mean that it will have biggest effect on productivity, operational efficiency, and so forth, and quite the opposite. One have to take into consideration that every cost-cutting measure leaves an effect on employee engagement and productivity. So you can do it, but you really should think carefully, and as we are saying, always put it on the 2 axes when it comes to seeing its kind of impact and relevance, benefit, and then looking at how much the cost-cutting measure itself costs. And some of these particular points we find more worrisome than others. And I myself like to speak about training, which is not even our business, but listen, over a couple of days, people have gone to work remotely fully. Their roles have changed, their targets have changed. They don't see their colleagues. They don't have daily in-person communication with their immediate managers. It is clear that there will have to be fundamental changes in the future, business-wise and ways of working. So this is a time to retrain your staff. And what we're doing is unfortunately quite the opposite. And same goes actually for engagement, because as I know, up until the end of 2019, companies understood the importance of engagement. They understood how it relates to productivity. They understood how it explains their chance of attracting and retaining the talent in both short and long term. And now, when everyone or many people are working remotely, I already have hard times understanding, how are they part of company and their team. This is one activity that we have cut. And then if we look at those remaining who still suggest they have not cut it or try to keep to it, we also see kind of minuscule or tiny activities. You would organize online channel or online kitchen, and some of these activities, I think it's very important to experiment and keep trying to find a way, but some of them, as we hear from employees themselves, feels quite formal or artificially induced and actually do not fix a problem. And same goes with training. Again, not many companies have fundamentally, rethought about, what kind of skills and competencies will be needed now in the new reality and in the new, you know, kind of in the very near future. Instead, they say, here you go, here are low budget or no budget online courses freely available. Watch a course on happiness on Harvard, and no, that was Yale, and let's hope that works for you. Or they have just moved some of their trainings the way they took place before to, let's say, remote channels, Microsoft Teams, and so forth. We're not talking about new ways of doing trainings, micro trainings, or whatever, mentorships and others. And we're not talking about focusing on substantial new skills and capabilities. Bartel, do you have anything to add in this respect?
Well, I think I could talk like 2 hours about this, but if to add shortly, I actually think the engagement is something what, even if it was a bit of stress in the beginning, all the companies should start thinking about that again. Meaning what we do today becomes our brand in the future. The organizational memory takes back to 15 years. So if we screw things up now, it will just pay back quite soon, in 6 months, in 8 months, let's see. Yeah. And therefore, no, what I didn't see so much, at least in the responses, what we saw in the survey was what specific, I don't know, engaging communication methods or techniques companies were inventing, or how exactly companies were working with still keeping people in the same boat, even if they were working remotely. I think in one of the webinars, we were also saying, imagine someone living alone, working from home and not leaving the home, only maybe do grocery shopping. And pretty much the manager might be the only person they talk to throughout the whole day. And therefore, the importance of how you kind of treat your employees or what kind of skills your managers have just gradually became so much more important, like over the night. And by cutting all the training, or by not investing in those areas which will make such a difference in the future, it is unfortunately just so short-sighted. Yeah. And I hope that now it is changing, but at least the first weeks we were looking and we were a bit scared about that.
And there are two parts of that. So these were the activities that were kind of most widespread, because it's easy to do that. You know, you ask any CFO, they will tell you in a split second which items are easiest to cut. But there is also other part which relates to biggest part of budget, and those are obviously salaries. And in respect to salaries, what we've seen is that companies have, for most part, chosen one or the other way of reducing their budgets, salary budgets, and 28% chose to go for reduction in working hours, anywhere between 10 and 60%, but actually more on the upper end. So we see a lot of time reduction to part-time job.
On this specific one, I also wanted to add that those reductions, and I think Zana, you were showing like this at one point of time, they are done because they bring this short-term effect to your cash flow. But I hope companies were also thinking of a long-term effect on engagement and productivity. Those specific exercises actually will have an effect on.
Mm-hmm. And then smaller percentage number-wise, but as I tell, budget-wise, it's a bit different when for reducing base salaries, and we see the salary cuts again between 5 and 30, but you know, more often to the upper end. And we've heard many stories about, you know, agreeing solidarily to cut all salaries by 20%. In this respect, it's very important what leadership is doing, and good examples suggest that they are cutting to show even more, you know. So yes, so That's in respect to salaries. And then in combination, trying to manage the cash flow at that very beginning of April. And I said the situation is changing. So by now, I hope it's already a bigger percent. We saw the quarter of companies have applied for some type of government funds and support. This does not answer the question how many of them have received it. So this is applying. So I guess in the light of what's happening right now, in respect to inland tax service, then that might be a bit different data. But yes, we're talking about downtown allowances for employees, tax holidays, and some co-financing. Which brings us to the second question.
Yes, I think we talked slightly about organizations cutting costs while keeping the workforce engagement and productivity. So what our question would be, what we would ask you to do is actually pick out from the list we have prepared what you in your organization have done to keep that balance.
If you check other, do you have a chance to explain it, or I shouldn't try?
No, you can verbalize your other.
No, it's fine.
Not in the poll, no.
All of the above.
Yeah, we should actually send maybe the suggestion to Zoom to introduce that, because we were looking for ability to put down the open-ended answers and they just don't have it in those polls. So that could be an improvement for sure.
They don't need it, you know, they have plenty of success without it, I guess.
Yeah, so true. So what is the most popular currently in the list? Communicating cost-cutting decisions timely is currently the most popular one.
Well, and that's actually, we'll have a bit of discussion afterwards, but you know, Parsla can share, you know, quite a famous case in Latvia when it comes to actually laying off huge number of people, and I always remember that story in which the engagement survey results went massively up after the layoffs, just because it was correctly communicated. So again, we have these discussions on almost daily basis with our clients, and everybody understand that some type of layoffs will be needed, you know, and but what is critically important is how you handle them, how you take care of people that you have to lay off, and how you explain your decisions to remaining team, and the result can be the opposite of you know, huge drop of engagement. We've heard about the stories where not only the employees who remain become more loyal, but actually the employees who have been laid off come to you and say that you know, anytime, you know, you call me back, I'll be back, because no one has treated, you know, me so well in this hard situation. So this is the ultimate moment of truth, and it's not just PR or employer branding. It's actual, I would say, both DNA of a company and yeah, its way of working.
You know, there is this old saying that don't look at words, look at works. And I think this is exactly the moment when pretty much talking about the company culture, management can do so much good for themselves, for the future, but also so much bad. Mm-hmm. So yeah, hoping for the best.
Okay, and here we actually come to the second part, using Boston Consulting Group framework of 12 capabilities.
Yes, what I will do, I will maybe shortly guide you through so that you understand what we were actually asking. Not many of you were participating in a survey, so we might take maybe a minute or two just to understand what we are looking at. we were asking the respondents of the survey to rate each of the 12 statements, which are points in HR action plan, on 2 axes. One was how important this is for your organization currently. And second question was how capable you think your organization is in achieving that specific action point. And all the points are grouped into 4 larger groups. First being strategic planning, even if everyone was super tactical and operational lately. Workforce adoption was the second block, which were mostly talking about real kind of points of cost cutting or reorganizing the work of employees. Third block was specifically about the HR function, restructuring the function, or even changing the way how performance is being measured. And a fourth block, which I personally think is the most important, was the sustainable implementation, or how do we make sure that things we do today will have a good effect on our performance in the future. And there are a couple of exclamation marks, which we have actually grouped together into the next insight. Zane? An insight is that that gap between the importance and capability is the gap which will help or which will not help, which will actually opposite, will destroy ability of organization to create strategic and sustainable HR practices. Why do we say that? If you look at those capabilities which are not meeting the expectations or are not as developed as they should be, it's kind of quite a scary list, right? Leadership, change management, employee engagement, communication, and strategic workforce planning. I think this is a good moment. And this is an opportunity in a way. I actually talked to one of my customers yesterday, and that CEO said, you know what, we never had the time to do those soft HR things, and now we do. So I think this also should be an opportunity for quite many leaders and CEOs to think through once again and think, what is the leadership we actually need today? It's not good enough with going around the office and clapping on a shoulder. There is something else our leaders should know in order to really bring the productivity up or to keep engagement into a certain level, or not talking about keeping a certain values of the organization which should be there to deliver the sustainable result. With the change management, it's pretty much the same story. Meaning, I think I have heard, I don't know, out of 10 times, 9 times when you talk with the businesses and ask, so how did it go with changing something? And they just go, nah, this wasn't for our organization, or no, it didn't go well, it didn't happen, or there was this and that reason. In most of the cases, it's because the companies have not had a good change management plan in place, and it wasn't properly executed, which is even more important. And the same, I think, about the communication also. Both me and Zana probably could talk for hours, which we don't have today, but potentially we could, how important it is to make sure that your internal and external messages are aligned, and that your employees don't hear about the news from outside, but from their direct managers, and that all the managers are equipped with the right skills and with the right messages to make sure that employees feel not only physically safe, but also emotionally safe, or at least aware of what is happening. And the fifth one is actually my favorite one. It's about the strategic workforce planning. You might say, who knows what will happen in 2 or 3 months, and not talking about the years. But from the other side, we perfectly know, we have all been there. The crisis will be over, and suddenly we will realize, digitalization hasn't disappeared. Artificial intelligence is still something all the companies strive for. We still look for different ways of working. We want to introduce agile, or we want to do this and that. All of those topics which were valid a couple of months ago, most likely will be valid also going forward. And this is the moment when to look at your competencies of the organization and think what needs to change, and what is something extraordinary, what I can do today to come out as the winner of the crisis in a couple of months.
No, absolutely. And I think what refers to individual companies also refers to Baltic states and each of our state, you know. So we see now international media praising those couple of countries who've been successful, you know, leading their country, and it's very interesting that the qualities they stress in case of, let's say, New Zealand, and not only other qualities that has to do with, you know, empathy and communication, you know. So that's one part, and the other part that I literally a couple of hours ago also I wrote short comment about is strategic workforce planning. So what refers to company refers to our countries. So are we actually planning for equipping our people with the needs that, you know, will allow them to earn, you know, not basic income, but actually, you know, higher income, and considering automation, any income, you know. So or are we equipping them for something that will have no use and will be, you know, automated in one way or other in a year or two anyhow. So I think it's fundamentally important question. At least Latvia lost 170,000 people in the last wave of crisis. If we're not smarter this time, we can lose equal amount once again. And I don't think with a low number or demographic situation we have that, we cannot afford it. So that's full stop to that. Now when it comes to that wonderful opportunity to attract high-performing individuals and build talent advantage, again, we understand it's of course individually a rational decision to protect in many cases cash flow and deep freeze, you know. But we also know, and we know, I'm sorry, from the last crisis, as most of us remember quite clearly, that it's not just theory, it is, you know, our own experience, that this is the time when amazingly talented people suddenly become available, you know. So this is a chance where you can hire, you know, people both locally that haven't been available, people internationally that haven't been available, again, both for companies, but also I believe for state. Having said that, I think one have to look at it both on kind of individual level and collective level. As we, of course, on the government level, the most important thing is to preserve, you know, kind of jobs. And in that respect, at least in the first weeks of crisis, so in the beginning of April, we saw that companies have been reluctant to do layoffs, apart from, of course, the industries that have been, whose business have been completely destroyed and that had no choice. But other than that, we saw that only 8% said that they have gone into mass layoff, and a quarter of companies had said that they have gone through performance assessments and laid off some part of their staff that hasn't been performing that well. And I think, meaning having that balanced approach is the ultimate solution. Even I've been telling that at the end of 2019, and this is no surprise, Ministry of Economics have also been talking about a lot. The productivity was low productivity was a major challenge for Latvian and Baltic companies. So so in that respect, having smaller number of people, you know, per each company, but having effective systems and processes, you know, that allow them to work with more advanced functions is what we strive essentially on every individual company level, but also on a state level.
Yes, which guides us to one of the last poll questions, actually. I also look at the time, I think we will manage fine. And the question is about knowing that most likely you will need to reduce the size of the workforce. What do you see as the greatest risk in doing so?
So, Parcel, how are we doing? Which is the most popular? Or
Wait, we have got now, wait, it's coming in 7, 8, 9, 10. The most popular currently is damage to morale of remaining employees, and also pretty much at the same place. We have difficulty to rehiring to these positions when the economy bounces back. So it's pretty much what we were also thinking when we were looking at those responses from the previous survey.
No, but and we can stress only once again, you can do it right, and you can do it the way that staff morale actually increases, not only stays the same. So it is about how you do it and how you communicate it. So, Parsley, if you just briefly can comment how this data looks, you know, in reference to global processes.
Yeah, we have a couple of world opinion leaders which we really trust, one of them being Josh Bersin, working together with the Deloitte. And what they do, they pretty much run the pulse checks every week to see what is happening in different organizations. And there is one called Top Issues on HR Departments' Minds, where again, what you clearly see, we are exactly in the same situation, meaning I think world has never been as united as now. Health and well-being, so well-being definitely is already on the agenda or on minds of larger corporations, HR leaders, also managing the remote work, but also what we clearly see is that this mental health and uncertainty definitely is an area where we foresee in the next coming weeks that will definitely grow. Meaning even yesterday, I think we had one of the meetings with the clients and they were saying, whoa, it was fun in the beginning, now it's not fun anymore. So really figuring out how to take care about the mental well-being or morale of the staff in this specific situation is something we assume companies will be working on also now. And here you have a long list of what those different organizations are doing, and pretty much, I would say, nothing that much unique, starting with the virtual coffee breaks or Zoom coffee rooms that it was brought up in our survey. Also, the communication is pretty much on many of those bullet points, working on making sure that employees can work from outside the office, etc., etc. So I don't know if we should give maybe 30 seconds for participants just to look through and see if there is something super appealing they would want to start immediately after our webinar. Was there anything specific you, Zanne, found on that list?
No, I think basically what you said is actually a very peculiar situation, because for years we've been looking, you know, for how can we even do 1% of what other international companies have been doing, because we are so backward, you know, because we had less years of, you know, evolving and so on and so forth. But right now we are in touch with big global companies, and we are in the same boat, meaning everyone is trying best, but nobody's sure.
One is which is still quite low on this list, but which we also assume will become quite important, is adjusting business and HR priorities, or setting the new targets for everyone who now is working in different environment and maybe even doing different jobs. So having a good target map, or having a clarity about what organization wants to achieve and communicate that, is something we foresee growing in its importance in the coming weeks.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then the last question, if we could quickly answer, and then we'll delve into quick Q&A, as we have 8 minutes remaining for our webinar.
Yeah. So we are now receiving first votes. I see 8, 9, 10 coming out. Communication, engagement are the two which have the longest bars. Yeah, let's see if someone else, yeah, another one, but pretty much yes, communication, engagement, mental health, just what we, I think, Zana also were discussing
Hmm?
are the
We have
priorities
been
currently.
actually now also gatherings, you know, kind of best examples, and you know, leading, you know, our latest studies on that topic. So I hope in 2-3 weeks we will be able to do a short webinar to give more ideas and show what others are doing in respect to engagement and communication. So that is that's that. We have quickly tried to run through all results. As I said, feel free to ask any questions right now, or raise a topic, or share your views. So
Let's see. This is the way it always is, or maybe we get some questions this time.
where one asks it in the chat or Q&A.
Yeah, you can ask in both ways, and you can actually also raise your hand and I'm gonna unmute you. So there are many options. We get a question from Olga. What do you think about period when we will go back to the offices? Expected adaptation again?
I can say my opinion. I see there, you know, two opposite kind of feedback also from the companies we work with. There are companies that have calculated already how much they can save by moving back to substantially smaller offices that would rather be showrooms or teamwork rooms. So they have essentially understood that their productivity is not going down. They've understood that people actually work for longer hours, so it kind of you know, has additional bonuses on top of not paying rent. So they will be those companies, particularly in the field, of course, of services and other businesses that allow it better. But we have heard equally many stories about the nightmare it is to work remotely, as I mentioned, about productivity drop and about people you know, counting days till they will be able, you know, to be back in their offices. So I believe that we will see both, but overall, definitely we will not go for fancy big offices. You know, also for economic reasons for a while, I believe. But Parsla, what's your?
Yeah, I think there was also a question coming in through the chat option, going back to normal life. I think the way it used to be normal, it won't go back anytime, meaning things have changed. And even all the companies who are saying, us working remotely, it's not possible. It is possible, yeah. It takes a bit of more of effort, and definitely some organizations or people will need to have that physical environment. But I also believe, and I agree with you, Zanne, that there will be quite many choosing something like a hybrid model of what it is today versus what it used to be or what it potentially can be.
Yeah, so even within the companies, well, we knew it before. We knew open, you know, open offices don't work. There are professions that need focusing, and for them, work from home is more suitable than those who need to, you know, who are more extroverts and need to gather the information with their backbone and need that energy. So it's not only company by company, industry by industry, but within the industries and within the industries by roles, but also within the industries when it comes to flexibility. So I think that there will be bigger flexibility. You know, if you want to work today from home because you feel like you have work that requires focusing, unless you have kids, of course, then go on. But yeah.
We have a new question from Anita Kalniņa. Any tips how to help employees to disconnect from work while working remotely? I see this is the problem and we might lose productivity in the future, or we will have a number of burnout problems soon.
Well, we have this has not yet been the topic that at least we have widely discussed with our clients. What I know was a general trend already a couple of years, because burnout question didn't arrive with the COVID. There have been countries like France and there have been companies that are very concerned or conscious of this issue. So there have been very technical solution to that, which is disconnecting work email in certain hours. So you're free to send it after 6 or 7 o'clock, but it will arrive only next day. It's also a question of work etiquette, but all of that, of course, is much more complicated in COVID situation, because the burden of child education has been put on the shoulders of parents. So actually people have appreciated the fact that they have flexible working hours. So the question of and it's also a legally very interesting question, how do you ensure it is much more complex.
Yes, and I think we have, again, a question from Victoria Meikshan coming in. If measuring employee engagement now for employees working remotely somehow differs from those working from the office. And I have to say, Victoria, no. You ask the same questions, and because the environment has changed, you might get a different answer. So the priorities or what people consider important might have changed, but measurement of engagement, you can still use exactly the same methodologies as before.
Absolutely. Yeah. Same methodology, same essentially tools, but I would say that there are definitely two tiny additions. One which comes to regularity, because situation, meaning from yourself, it's changing, overnight. In the morning it was that, in the evening it's something else. So basically you need to check in more regularly when it comes to engagement, A, B, and you need to expand the topics you're asking about, because there will be no other way you can check those questions. So, but other than that, I also would say that no.
Yeah, there is one excellent question from Kaspers also. Challenges in various industries are extremely diverse, hence the strategies for battling with restrictions caused by virus are different. Yet, one is similar for those who continue operations: to maintain relationships and connectivity at physical level, retaining feeling of presence. What further suggestion you might give for upcoming weeks on top of what has been said? How to keep the physical and warm relationship in this time? I think that is exactly the $1 million question everyone currently is working with. Mm-hmm. And on the top of what we said, I would still ask you to go back and look at your leadership capabilities. Think of if the management is actually role modeling the situation, and what do you need to do to support your frontline soldiers, which I would say are the managers currently reaching out to your employees, what they need. Yeah, that would definitely be something I would invest into, to find out if they are ready, because everyone currently also will be so scared to come back and to tell you that they don't know how to do it. So it is absolutely essential to find out with the anonymous surveys, with some other methods which are currently available, how to help them, because if you will help them, they will help your employees for sure. Anita is running to different meeting. Yeah. Anyone else? I see we are 2 minutes. Oh, there are 2 more. Any activities by employers to support mothers who have small kids at home, meanwhile working from home? What I have seen, not heard that much actually from the local employers, but mostly from international ones, is giving paid leaves or assigning a half-time work, but still paying for the full time. That is what I see some larger international organizations doing. Here, yeah, I think we have heard all of the possible elements of virtual kindergartens and all the other activities you can do, but still I think taking care of the physical and emotional well-being of kids definitely is the primary responsibility of parents now. So that's what they should also focus on, and employers should respect that. Elina Priedita is having a question. How do you see development of B2C or B2B sales regarding what is an excellent customer service? No handshaking, no would you like a cup of coffee, etc. What will replace that? What is an excellent customer service with 2-meter distance?
Well, this is not quite the topic that we specialize in, but it definitely affects, let's say, even recruiting. You know, so how do you ensure, candidate experience that is good enough without, all the aspects that we've gotten used to. And I think that handshakes by now, it's been assumed are good to go for forever, but I don't think it's a big deal, to choose other forms of greeting, learning from Japanese or other cultures, and customer service or candidate experience wise as well. While, one-on-one contact has been allowed all through the peak of COVID in Baltics, well, at least in Latvia. So it hasn't been forbidden, to meet one-on-one someone if you observe 2-meter distance, and I don't think that 2-meter distance has been what has killed formal relationship. So that part, even though we're not, as I told, specialists in this field, but as much as I can relate to this in our field, I don't think it's going to be a major problem. What is interesting, of course, is again, how do you automate unneeded processes, the processes that were needed before? So, also in the recruiting, how do you make it digitally interesting, and how do you use it for your good, to ramp up actually the experience rather than tone it down? Because it wasn't about the handshake at the first place, I believe. So it's rather about the content and feeling and experience. So do you have any other questions?
Well, I feel like we are not in Baltics today. I don't know. We received like 10 questions, Anna. It's amazing.
Thank you so much. It's been most we've seen when it comes to interactions, both offline and online, from Baltic crowd. So some good things have happened in these terrible times. So yes, well, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you find it useful for your own companies or institutions. As I told, if you have any more detailed or personal questions or unclarities, feel free to contact either me or Parsla. Drop first though a message so that we know who you are, to be able to answer. But yes, so hold on. There are wonderful and many opportunities. We just have to use this time wisely.
Yes, thank you for all the thank yous we are currently also receiving, and looking forward to see you one day, not just through the computer, but in real life again. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.